Hi folks, welcome to this is the theory for section C in your core knowledge. It's commercial practice, okay? Now commercial practice refers to the range of activities by which companies linked to product design conduct their business, and it's going to include things like marketing, product development, pricing, promotion, distribution and advertising. So one of the things you've got to make sure you do then is by the end of this section you need to have developed a knowledge and understanding of the role of marketing. So that's going to include assessing the consumer's needs. You're going to be aware of the product development process. So that's not just making the product. That's everything from conception right up to the selling it on. And that's going to include the pricing and promotion. And part of that promotion is going to be advertising. So you need to be aware of the different types of advertising that are available to companies. Now I want to start off really just thinking about design itself. Designing for the sake of the design is not what design is all about. Otherwise then you end up making a ridiculous product like you've got here on the left, and no one will buy it because it's just no good. They've not done any kind of research into whether or not anyone will actually buy that product. You've really got to think about the user and their needs, otherwise you're going to be wasting a lot of your company's money developing something that's not going to sell. So taking that in mind then, if you're designing for a specific user group, all right, that's going to improve your chances of actually selling a product. So you've got to think very, very carefully about who is your target market. Who are you aiming this product at? Who are you going to find out a little bit more about? Once you've got a target market, then you can focus on extending that market. So once you've actually got your claws into a group of people and you've sold them some things, you can then start to expand your market. You can sell that group of people more things, or you can start expanding your target market so you can sell more things to those people. To do this, companies make use of marketing, okay? So this is one of the first things that you need to be aware of then. Marketing is figuring out whether or not there's a need for a product or not. You've probably come across people in town centres asking you all kinds of questionnaires. Very often if you buy something from a site, you'll get some sort of feedback and there might be a questionnaire as part of that. And it's all data which companies use to find out more about you. The more they know about you, the more chances they've got of developing a product that will actually satisfy some need that you might not even be aware of yet. So this gathering information is called market research, and really the only two things that you have to think about are the interviews and questionnaires, so like some sort of survey to find out information. Now one of the things you need to be aware of is the strengths of each of those methods. Now during your coursework you'll have to do some of these. Interviews are very good at getting detailed information from a few people. So if you're designing for a specific client or small group of people, an interview is going to give you a lot of good, rich information. A questionnaire doesn't give you as rich information, but it gives you lots and lots of information. So that's why questionnaires are always quick and easy to answer, because they're just designed to get data, as much data as possible, so they can start working out statistics and put all that into graphs. Now if a company's done that market research, so they're convinced that there's going to be a need for the product, the next thing is you make the product. All right, if you're convinced that people are going to buy this as soon as possible, you need to start developing and designing that product. But what comes after that? Okay, well, the next thing you need to do is you need to think about how you're going to sell that product to that target market. Okay, so you've identified your market, you've established that there's a need, you've made the product, now you need to make sure that that market know of your product. Okay, and that is going to take a strategy of some sort. You're going to have to plan it. Okay, think of it like a plan of attack. It really does have to be orchestrated in such a way, because you need to shift all those products as quickly as possible to get the money into your business as quick as you can. Now part of that strategy is something that's referred to as the marketing mix, or a marketing strategy. and the basic components are often called the 4Ps. Okay, so this is really, really important that you remember this. Okay, so that's price, place, promotion, and product. Okay, it doesn't matter which order you put them in, but you need to remember those 4Ps. If you're coming up with a strategy, you have to consider those 4 things, otherwise you've not got a complete strategy. Okay, so let's have a look at them in turn. So if we focus on the product, all right, you have to be aware of your product's unique selling points. What is it about your product which makes it better than all the other ones out there? Okay, if you don't know what's good about your product, you cannot sell the idea of that product to your customers, can you? Okay, so think of, say, the product that you've been working on today, and can you identify, even if it's just 3 of its best features? Is it really, really lightweight? Is it incredibly versatile? Is it amazingly sort of comfortable? You know, has it got a set of functions that you could talk about? So all these things you need to work on and decide what your product's unique selling points. Once you've established what your unique selling points are, you need to figure out a price. All right, so think carefully about how much you would sell your product for. Now, you don't just pluck a figure out of thin air. You need to think about a few things before you establish a selling price. That's going to include things like the demand. You know, are there going to be people queuing up for this product? If so, you might be able to set it a little higher. Think of all the queues you get outside the Apple store whenever they're selling a new iPhone. You know, it can't be a reason for why they're selling it at such a expensive price, is because they know that there's going to be such a demand for it. If they drop that price, I can't say it's going to increase the demand as much, but they know that they can hit that price and still sell it. Obviously, you're going to need to be aware of how much it costs to make the product. Okay, again, going back to the example of an iPhone, the actual bits of an iPhone probably cost about £180 to make. The rest of that is all profit towards Apple. But it's not just that. They would have spent money on research and development over the years, so the cost of the actual materials and the parts are just a part of the overall consideration for a selling price. You might have taxes by the government might have been set up that you've got to incorporate into your selling price. If your company has to hit a certain sort of green environmental threshold, and if it doesn't do that, it gets fined, then you've got to pass that down into your product so that your product, the money that it generates, helps to pay those taxes. And it can also depend on the competition. Very often you may have an idea for a price, but if you're £1 cheaper than a competing product, more than likely people will go for that competing product just for the price difference. So very often a manufacturer, a company may have to do some research into existing products and prices and see whether or not they can afford to sell theirs at a bit cheaper. In some cases it might even be doing that artificially and taking the hit for a little while until they've established a market, and then perhaps the next version they could up the prices a little bit. Thirdly is the place. Where are people going to be able to get hold of this product? Is it going to be in a local shop? Is it going to be in a larger store? You know, something that you might have to drive out to. So it might be in a shopping mall. It might be in like an industrial park. It might be mail order. It might be internet based. Okay, so think very carefully about where people are going to actually go to buy your product. Last of all is promotion. Okay, how are people going to know that it's for sale? You've done all this work, you've figured out what's good about the product, you've figured out the price, you know which shops are going to stock it. The last thing is to get that message across to your customers so they know what's great about your product, how much it's costing, where they can buy it from, and it all has to work together. Okay, now there may be little offers that you could do. You might do a promotion somewhere, so your product might be, you know, buy a football, get a free bottle, you know, so you might sort of tie in your product as a promotion. A lot of companies make use of trade fairs, so they start sort of promoting their product before it's even available in stores. You get lots of sort of consumer electronic shows. There was one recently in the States, the big CES show. It's in Las Vegas, and there's lots of new technology there that's all displayed, and again it just creates a lot of hype, a lot of anticipation for your product. So when it does actually come out, people are going to be interested and they're going to want to buy it. A massive part of promotion, and this is the last part of this little section, is looking at advertising. Okay, and Eddie Izzard has the best word on advertising.
So anyway, advertising. Yes, that's what I brought you here to talk about. Yes, advertising. Because I've been looking at it, and I've noticed that certain people in the advertising area get paid huge wadges of cash in brown bags in order to subtly adjust our minds. Because, like in the old days, adverts, well, perhaps before the 50s, I don't know, adverts were much more blatant. Adverts were much more, go on, there it is, come on, all day, there it is. And as consumers, we were much more, oh, okay, I didn't realize, sorry, don't hit me. Nowadays, we have choice, don't we? We're much more choosy, and we're much more aware of what we can buy. So the adverts are more subtle, they're the soft sell. Adverts are much more like, oh, look at that. Yeah. Those two people like it. And they're shagging.
Okay, so the point he's trying to make is obviously over the years that so many products are competing for our attention, the advertising has evolved to, astronomical lengths in terms of how they get your attention, whether it's viral advertising, in-your-face advertising, subtle little advertising. There's such a vast array of different ways of getting people aware of your product. One interesting aspect of advertising relies a lot upon slogans. Okay, if you can master a slogan for your product, then again that can lead to some more brand awareness. It can catch your eye, and very often companies are known literally for their brands. I mean, take these three examples. Okay, just do it. I'm pretty sure that everyone would know that is Nike. The second one might be a little dated for you guys, but it works for me. Good things come to those who wait was actually the slogan for Guinness, because the whole point of pouring a Guinness is it takes about 180 seconds to actually sort of pour it and let it wait and let it sort of settle. And the last one, everybody your age tends to get this one, I'm loving it, of course, is the slogan for McDonald's. Okay, and so remember, slogans very good to draw attention to your product, and they can catch your eye of your target market, and they can help to reinforce your branding. So think carefully about if there's a slogan that you could use as part of the product marketing for the product that you've designed recently. Now, back to advertising. A lot of people think that advertising is the complete picture of marketing strategy. It's not, okay? It is only a part of your marketing strategy. You must plan it in terms of that price, product, place before you start thinking about the promotion. So think of it as more of it will attract more of your target group and persuade other people to buy the product. Hopefully, because you've taken the time out to do some market research, and you've thought about the unique selling points, and you've thought about where it's going to be sold, hopefully your market will know and will tend to buy it anyway. They'll know that this product is coming. So you use the advertising to try and expand your market. Okay. Now, the only thing you've got to remember with advertising is that how much it's going to cost. Think very carefully again about your target market. Okay, the audience, the people that are going to be seeing or watching this advert, and think about the most appropriate type of advertising. This is often referred to as the medium. So if you hear someone talking about what advertising medium would you use, then they're relating to things like TV, radio, newspaper, magazine advertising. Now, one thing you need to be aware of with your advertising are some of the sort of advantages, limitations, and some of the implications of costing. Now, I'm not going to ask you to do this on a handout, but if you look in your textbook, you'll see there's some quite detailed information, and there's no way you need to sort of remember it all, but you need to be able to recall at least, just sort of one good, one bad, and just be aware of how much things cost. Purely because if you're asked to describe a suitable advertising medium for a product that you've designed, you need to be able to justify why you've chosen that one. And it can vary depending upon your audience. You know, if your product is aimed at business people, your advertising is going to be completely different to if you were designing a product for children. Okay, not only in the content of the advert that you put together, but the type of advert, the medium, and where it's going to actually be viewed. Okay, so if we looked at a TV advert,
car insurance, eh? What can you do? Go compare, go compare.
okay, now another dated one, I'm sorry, but it was very famous at the time. It's really, really annoying. I know they've changed the whole sort of branding now, but as you can see, TV is very, very high mass market coverage. Okay, if you figure out how many people it reaches compared to how much it costs, it does actually work out really, really good sort of value for money. It can generate a really powerful emotive response, and of course you can use all kinds of special effects, sounds, and images. The only problem with TV though is it's quick. You could miss it. You might hear an advert playing when you're in one room. By the time you get in there, it's gone. And also you need to target your sort of your market specifically with scheduling. So for example, there'd be no point putting a children's advert for a new toy on at 10 o'clock at night, because no children shouldn't be anyway. Children shouldn't be awake ready to watch that advert. So it's like picking your time, picking your channel that it's going to be on. There's no surprise that certain slots in between sort of program breaks are more expensive than others. The break in Coronation Street costs a lot more than the break on a daytime show. Recently, the Super Bowl, I think to get a 30-second advert would literally, I think it costs $4 million for a 30-second advert during the Super Bowl. And for some companies, they blow their entire marketing budget on adverts during the Super Bowl. Okay. So be aware of that. It can be expensive. Okay, so it reaches a lot of people. It's really visual, but it's quick. It's very expensive. Radio, on the other hand, gives a very good local impact. All right, so if you're advertising something that you want to reach a local group of people, it might be a local event. Then radio is really good because you've got local broadcasting sort of stations. Then you know that your advert is reaching the people that you want to come to your event. Rather than, say, advertising it on Radio 1, where it's going to reach the whole of the country, you would target your specific radio station. It's also very good for people that are in the car. All right? If you're sat in a car listening to a radio, you're pretty much a captive audience. So you can tailor specific adverts for that. Limitations to radio. It's only audio, okay, so it's purely, you don't get any kind of visual message with it. Just like TV, it can be very, very fast and fleeting. You might miss it. You might ignore it, all right? A lot of people just have the radio on and they just ignore it. It becomes like background noise, okay? So be aware of that with radio. In terms of cost, depends how you do it. If you do it local radio, it's going to be relatively low. However, if you do something like Radio 1, it's going to be a bit more expensive. Now, if we go on to magazines again, they're very good for local markets. They can also be national, they can be geographic. They're accepted by a lot of people. A lot of people believe them. And there's lots of different types of magazines. There are like sort of prestige magazines, expensive ones. You get magazines tailored to specific hobbies and activities. Okay, so magazines are actually quite good at targeting the specific group of people that you're after. TV is very broad, radio is quite broad and local geographically, but magazines could target the exact people who would use the product that you've designed. Okay. In terms of limitations, it's the shelf life. Okay. Again, you might just flick past it, bang, and it's done. And also, you may not have any control about where that advert is actually positioned. You might end up with an advert that's right at the back of the magazine that nobody ever gets to, or it's buried within lots of other adverts that nobody quite gets to or pays attention to. In terms of cost, again, it depends on the location. You put it in something like a newspaper that's going to reach a lot of people, it's going to cost more. Certain magazines will cost more. The placement in the magazine is going to cost more. You put it on the back cover, that's going to cost more than if it's inside. If you put it on the inside cover, if you have a double page spread, half page, quarter page, all these things are going to add to the cost. Direct mail, think of it as it's junk mail, okay? So it's literally getting a leaflet posted through your door advertising a product or a service. Now again, some advantages: you can select your audience. So if you're opening up a new takeaway, you could target that local vicinity and you could push your menu through the doors of that local vicinity. So you're targeting the very people that you want to use your service. Nationally, you could sort of personalize it. So very often sometimes you get junk mail through and it's addressed to you. They've got all these mail merge things on file, and so they can sort of fool you into thinking that this message is aimed specifically at you because it's got your name on. Disadvantages or limitations to direct mail. Well, what do we do with most of this that comes through our door? We chuck it away. Okay, so a lot of direct mail is discarded as junk. A lot of it doesn't really have sort of good quality as well in terms of the images on there. In terms of cost, again, it depends how many you print out. If you print a lot and get it to a lot of people, then that's not too bad. But on the whole, it's relatively high cost per exposure, okay? Because you're only reaching a select group of people. Billboards, again, they're a different kind of advertising, okay? They're pretty flexible. You get a lot of repeat viewings. It can be targeted locally for like traffic, passing traffic. It can also be nationwide. All right, they're designed to catch mobile consumers, so they're designed to catch people who are driving around, moving around. You can even nowadays as well, you can get electric billboards, ones that change the advert. And we're not just talking about the giant sort of poster type billboard that we've got here on the example, but you can get them smaller ones that are used in like shopping centres, which sometimes roll round a bit like a conveyor belt, or you get ones that sort of they're made up of sort of blinds that twist, so the design can keep changing. In terms of limitations, it's again, it doesn't select the audience, it just people passing by. It has to be very image based. You can't put a lot of information on there because it's never stared at for long. Because people are passing by, the message needs to be very, very quick for them to understand. And of course, with them being out in the open like this, they can get vandalized very, very easily. So in terms of costs, they're generally low cost. It depends on where they go. So for example, outside an airport or along a very busy section of the motorway, there are some sections of the M6 where billboards cost a lot more because the traffic is usually moving slower, so it's like a high volume, there's going to be a captive audience, so it's going to cost more. So the last thing we're going to look at is internet advertising. Internet advertising kind of takes on board a lot of all the aspects of some of these other forms of advertising. Okay, it's got the sort of targeting sort of nature of direct mail. So if you're searching for a particular product, then you can time adverts to pop up relative to what it is that you're searching for. So if any of you guys have ever been when you're on Google, and once you've done a few searches for things, the adverts on the right hand side will usually have something to do with the thing that you've been searching for. It takes up the sort of the visual aspects of TV, because you can have video running on there, you can have animations and stuff popping up. Likewise with the radio side of things, you can have sort of audio things popping up at the same time, so it mixes quite a few things. Likewise with the magazines, you can target specific sort of market groups. So if your site is dedicated towards sort of sports, then you could target sort of sport product adverts to those particular sites. And just like with a billboard, if you think of a pop-up on the internet, a pop-up is just a bit like a billboard. It pops up as you're doing something else, then you need to get rid of it, just like as if you're driving along and you see a billboard. Okay, so internet is really sort of quite versatile in what it can do. And again, it's just that fact that you can laser-like target individuals with it makes it sort of really cost-effective. In terms of the limitations, again, it may be ignored. Like the TV, sometimes if it's quick, it might be ignored. Like you get with the direct mail, you just click on the close or the X button all the time. In terms of cost, Again, you know, a very, very low cost, which is why it's used a lot nowadays. Normally, you can even direct traffic through it. So if someone goes to a site via a pop-up, then as part of the price from that could actually go towards paying off the advert. Okay, so just be aware of these main types. And if you are asked in the exam, you know, what type would you use, you need to remember those advantages and limitations, okay, and the appropriateness of the advertising medium. So we'll finish just on, in terms of the appropriateness, just finish on a last word where it's, you know, if you've ever noticed at certain times, so on children's TV you get adverts that are all for toys, or during a holiday program you get adverts for holidays, and that's all designed deliberately to target the people that are on the edge of this target group. Okay, so the idea being is that if you were coming up with a strategy, you would coordinate your advert. So once you've designed your advert, say if it was a TV advert, you would have to coordinate exactly what time it went out and around what type of program. Okay, this is what I was saying earlier about you would not put an advert for a children's toy on, perhaps during the advert for a holiday program, because most of the people that are going to be sat there are going to be the ones that are watching the holiday program. All right, so you're going to have to think very carefully about the type, the type you use and when you'd actually do it. In other words, thinking of the appropriateness. All right, if you think about it, you know, one of the things you need to perhaps sort out in your head is think about the appropriate media and method of advertising for different target markets. So think about what you'd do if you were aiming a product at primary school children, or think about what you would do if your product was targeting men and women over 65, you know, like pensioners. Likewise, think about if your product was aimed at sort of young males, you know, between 18 and 24, how things would change there. Or even sort of specific groups of people, you might think, right, my product would be ideally suited for women between the ages of 45 and 55 with a significant disposable income. All right, so say if you had something as targeted as that, what kind of advertising would you do for them? Yeah, would you use the internet? Would they ever see it? Would you use a billboard? Would they ever drive past it? So you need to be able to identify and justify an appropriate medium of advertising, and you need to be able to justify your marketing strategy. Okay, that draws it to a close. Okay, so we've looked at hopefully all the aspects of commercial practice. So we've looked at the role that marketing plays, we've looked at the marketing strategy, the 4 Ps, and we've looked at different types of advertising, their advantages and their limitations. Okay, so if you do get a question in the exam, that's what you need to remember. And from past experience, the marketing side questions have popped up quite a lot. They seem to be quite popular in where they ask you a question about your unique selling points and how you'd advertise it, and then they tag on a necessary modifications question. Okay, so it seems to be one of the areas that does seem to get questioned a lot in the exam. Okay, thanks for listening, and good luck with the rest of the work.